Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Today we have a brand new set of crazy revenge stories. Here we go. You picked on the wrong underdog, guy. I'm still proud of this to this day. Names are changed. A few years ago, I was working in a job I really enjoyed with a team I really gelled well with. There were about 5 of us working on the same portfolio of projects in different roles, and every single team member was just cream of the crop, incredibly good at what they do. I can't overemphasize how satisfying it was to work with such an incredibly competent, likable group of people. In this job, instead of getting the Sunday night blues, I would get excited thinking about the work I would be doing the next day and planning how we would solve the complex problems together. It was like a series of logic puzzles. The one downside to this job was Steve. Steve was not in the supervisory line for me or any of my team members, but he was about 3 levels above us and very senior. He'd been there for years and was tight with senior leadership. Steve was also a mega creep. He said extremely inappropriate things to young women in the office, and he apparently wasn't averse to being handsy, though as far as I knew, that was as bad as it had gotten. The women in the office all knew to steer clear of him. My first week on the job, the Whisper Network made sure I knew. Never be alone with Steve. Harassment is difficult to document, and no one wanted to risk their career and put a target on their back going after a big guy like Steve, so he just got away with it for years. So for a couple of years, I followed this advice. There were a few instances of Steve saying incredibly uncomfortable things to me in passing, but for the most part, I managed to avoid him. Then I found out that my roommate Rob had gotten on Steve's radar. For context, Rob is a non-neurotypical and has some minor tickish behavior. He's also shy and easily spirals into social anxiety when put in uncomfortable situations. So one evening at our team's informal weekly happy hour after work, Rob lets it slip that Steve's been giving him a hard time. The rest of us are like, whoa, wait, what? Because Steve never interacts with staff at our level except to creep on women, and we basically make Rob tell us everything. Basically, for the last few weeks, Steve has been bullying Rob, making fun of his tics and mimicking his way of speaking back to him. He's also been asking Rob how he can possibly be competent to do his job and implying he's a pity hire. He once even called him an R-word. It's clear Steve is seeking out Rob for this because, again, there's no reason for him to interact with our team. Rob has been having horrible anxiety over this situation and has had bad insomnia and stomach issues since Steve started targeting him. And not that it bears repeating, but just to reiterate, Rob is a effing beast at his job and a genuinely good guy. At this point, I'm seeing red. We all were. We tell Rob to go to HR, that his neurological issues put him in a protected ADA class, that he could get Steve in big trouble. Rob panics and says he can't do that, begs us not to tell anyone at work, and says he wishes he hadn't said anything. We assure him we won't say anything if that's what he wants, but we're all very distressed. I leave the bar fuming, just thinking, okay, that's it, F you, Steve, you're going down. I can't tell anyone about what's happening to Rob because I promised him as much, so I start my own paper trail. I start baiting Steve, and I don't mean I behave in any suggestive manner or lead him on, I just stop avoiding him. And I even initiate contact myself. I IM him through the company IM system and very professionally/politely ask if a big client will be staying on through the next project cycle, and the floodgates open. He starts sending me outrageously sexual IMs. I mostly don't respond, but I occasionally keep him going by sending extremely literal responses to his innuendo-laden questions or pretending not to understand something suggestive he's saying. Sometimes he clarifies, and I'll outright say, this isn't appropriate, or this is making me uncomfortable, or please don't say things like that, Steve. But he steamrolls right over me. During this time, I've also been seeing him more in person around the office, and he often says gross stuff to me in person as well. A lot of it is not just inappropriate, but bizarre. And every time this happens, I immediately go back to my desk and write down what he said, the date and time, and the names of any witnesses. After about a month and change of this, I compile my creep journal with printouts of the IM conversations and take them to my HR rep. I ask to file a sexual harassment complaint against Steve. As soon as these words leave my mouth, my rep instantly gets the head of HR and 2 other reps and they go through my evidence with me and ask me a ton of questions. The head of HR assures me they'll take my complaints very seriously and asks if I know of any women around the office who have had similar issues with Steve. I'm able to give them several names. They send me on my way, and 2 weeks later, my rep formally reaches out to me and lets me know Steve has been let go. Much jubilation is had around the office. It took a couple of months for me to piece together the whole story, but basically after my complaint, HR started following up with the names I gave them, both the witnesses to my in-person encounters with Steve and the other women he'd harassed. They corroborated what I told HR. Then through them, word started spreading around the office that HR was conducting an investigation against Steve. This emboldened at least 15 different women who'd been biting their tongues about Steve for ages to come forward and tell their own Steve stories. During all this, IT had been asked to go through Steve's emails and IMs. And this had not only been used to validate my printouts as legitimate, but IT had found a ton of additional incriminating stuff in Steve's correspondences. Somewhat frustrating, Steve received an extremely generous severance package as part of his termination, but on the bright side, word got around the industry quickly, and Steve was poison at that point. No company would touch him with a 10-foot pole. The last time I thought to snoop on his public social media pages, he was listing himself as an independent consultant in our industry, which I seriously doubt he's actually doing. And based on his public Facebook page, he's doing a couple of MLMs, so that should kill off whatever savings he has in short order. I don't work with Rob anymore, but I did recently attend his wedding. He's extremely happy with his new wife, a sweet and lovely woman, and he's doing really well in his career. Good on you. But it's such a shame it took so long for somebody to speak up. And our next story. Don't hit my guys. Previous boss walked into the office where I was team lead over 3 engineers. I was out at the time, but heard this from the victim. Boss was angry about a mistake one of my guys made on an architectural plot. Not a mistake, but a failure to use telepathy. Boss got so angry that while standing behind the seated engineer, he punched the guy in the side of the head. As if immediately realizing what he did was wrong, he said, "Fix it," then left for the day. I got back to the office soon after, and they told me what happened. We made a pact that if he ever put his hands on one of us, we'd all stand up and put him down hard and back each other up. Well, it never came to that. After approaching upper management and HR, I got the runaround on reporting the incident. They all basically said, if it was that bad, then report it to the police. But he's too high in the political structure to fire for this. Unhappy with that answer, and with my guy unwilling to involve the police, a plan was set into action. We invited his boss, the district manager, to see the progress we'd made on a day when boss wasn't around. During this, I asked the DM to have skip-level one-on-ones with my guy, saying that it would be good for morale. He agreed. Each one of my guys opened with, "The biggest concern I have is that boss man punched Tony a couple months ago, and HR told us they couldn't do anything about it. How can you ensure my safety?" I got called in and gave my story, but had to say I wasn't there. I tried to report it up through the proper channels and failed. I was told it was political suicide for my entire team if I was to push it. District manager didn't buy into all the political bullcrap. He made things happen. We agreed that my guys should not be in fear of a physical attack. I also had DM's backing in case of political fallout, and he was a personal friend of the CEO, so that was good enough protection. Boss man was walked and trespassed. Boom. Don't hit my guys. And our last story. Black Friday Karen wants to push and shove, so I do some pushing of my own. This occurred at a large chain sporting goods store on Black Friday. Before the sale began, shoppers had been lining up in front of tables covered with cloth in order to get the doorbuster items underneath. The bell sounds and the cloth is lifted. I'm quickly, yet respectfully, rifling through a table of highly discounted yoga pants in various colors when I get shoved pretty aggressively from behind. I ignore it and continue what I'm doing. Another shove. This time a screechy voice calls out, "Make some room or move your butt." Now keep in mind the table is very large, so it's not like I was hoarding prime real estate all for myself. Karen just wanted in and didn't care who she had to run over to get in. Rather than making a scene, I wedged against another shopper, allowing her some room to slide closer. I had the last pair of size medium black pants on the table draped over my arm, looking through sizes of another color, when I felt the pants get pulled off my arm. I looked up, and of course, it's Karen. So I said, "Hey, those are mine," and grab onto them, to which she replies with an obnoxious smirk, "Not until you pay for them," and started pulling them, trying to get them out of my hands. At this point, I know it's only going to go downhill. So rather than be on the 6 o'clock news for fighting on Black Friday, I cut my losses and decided to leave the table. My husband, who'd been watching from a spot about 20 feet away, was half laughing as he saw me retreat empty-handed and defeated. "Cheer up," he said, and pushed a shopping cart toward me filled nearly to the top. "Here you go." Wouldn't you know, my husband had commandeered the pushy woman's cart while she was busy digging through yoga pants. We smiled at each other, and I happily rolled her cart and all her other Black Friday finds to the other end of the store, then turned her purse into customer service on my way out the door. This warms my retail frozen heart. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.